opening material of this, I think you're going to find they're exactly the same. This material is without the coin in it.
That's right. This has no coin. This is.
But it's the same. But it's the same as this. All right. Now look at this little glass bead that runs in between here.
Right.
That's what fuses the stones together. There is no space between them. Now, did they drag and cut and carve?
Looks like a partial melt.
And if you're real clever on it, you'll find that there's another line that runs through here that joins this stone, this one, and this one all together. These come from the Pyramid of Abu Dawash, or Rigel.
Well, you know, we have this technology of cement.
I don't know if you can see this or not.
It's incredible, isn't it?
A little tiny line.
And it's a glass material, and I'm not sure if it's what's this stuff? Amber?
See, we have the technology cement, which is essentially liquid stone, but we haven't learned the actual sort of molecular symmetries in order to what we call melt that.
But we can do, well, I don't think melt is mix it, because when we actually get back to a point that if we look...
It heat as we know it.
Yeah, and what is cement?
Yeah, exactly. It's chemistry more than heat.
And what did Rome use to build the Colosseum?
Right. Well, see,
and the aqueducts and all that was cement, wasn't it?
Well, so the overall metaphor here is what we do with magnetism. I mean, in a sense, we're recognizing that if we can braid the magnetism, we can cut the rock. If we can braid the magnetism, we can create a waveform that's sustainable, whether it's DNA, or whether it's the architecture, or whether it's the magnetic lines through the land, or whether it's the magnetic lines through the stars. In each case, if the braid is what we call recursive or self-embedded or fractal, then that wave can re-enter itself non-destructively, and we call it self-aware.
At the location that by geogravitational phenomenon, it has to sit at the spot, and it has to be of materials. Mm-hmm. But now in the quest to find out what was the material, when we look backwards for history, we knew that the Greek knew how to use cement. We knew that the Romans knew how to use cement. But then from the time of the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, that was lost. And so for a long time, history up to the 1800s still didn't have cement. But for the only mentality, everything had to be cut in like this. But then we rediscovered cement, the Portland, and look what in just a few years, in 200, that is done in America.
And those are all just the fossils of our ancestors, really, because the essence of the calcium in the cement is really the ability of ancestors' bones.
Right, it's tied to that.
Into memory, really.
Yeah. This is mostly calcium. Well, if we tie all this together, what we're talking about, where the stars that are in the sky are duplicated, you might say, by buildings on the surface of the Earth, all of this, the reason for them doing that had to do with expanding consciousness, of moving from one way of interpreting the reality into another. You can call it resurrection or ascension or anything else like that. And I believe that the reason that we are understanding all the pieces today, why it's all coming together, why you're understanding this and you're understanding all these things, is because we are at this moment, this very moment in history, remembering what our ancient brothers and sisters knew, and we're about to live it. And Egypt is a big key in all of this. I believe that there is much more hidden in all of this, not just on the surface in the sky, but in the earth also, that will surface in the near future, and that it'll become clear that what they were doing, what they were setting up, wasn't just for then, but it was also for right now, for right this very minute.
Yeah, if somebody was like in their own backyard saying, well, gee, the Egyptians knew that for their kids' memories to survive, they had to make some kind of magnetic picture, and then the Templars building Gothic cathedrals said, oh, we got to make some kind of magnetic picture. And in each case, they knew that their children's memories literally would not become stars unless they made a little kind of lens to project them. In fact, there's a fascinating story. A group that's working with the cathedral studies believes that we call them zodiac landscape fractals, that projecting the zodiac on the land switched places at one particular time in history. And they believe that for a time, and I believe the Middle Ages roughly, all zodiac fractals were projected like straight down. And then there was another time in history when all the star maps on the land were built has mirror images of what's in the stars. And the difference...
That's what you see at Dindar, actually. It's in reverse.
Yeah,
it's a mirror image.
And that's the mystery. Well, the clue here is, when is consciousness arriving at the Earth, and when is consciousness being harvested from the Earth? And one way you can understand that...
Death and resurrection?
In a sense.
Is that a word?
Yeah. And if you're talking to a physicist, you can give them a clue on this, because they're all wondering why all biological proteins, all the DNA on the planet, has a stairway up the down staircase that goes one way. It's called enantiomorphism, the handedness. All biological proteins go one way, and if you make them go the other way, you get NutraSweet, and it's cancerous, right? Yeah, it's true, sure. So the idea is that now the mystery is, well, how did all of our stairways, the helices of our biological proteins, all go one way? And they realized, well, what started them all was the voltage between the Earth and the sky, the lightning that spun the primal soup. So here's the protein saying, how are we going to spin to eat a new dimension, right? Well, all of that lightning was going one way. Now, what they say is the voltage, the DC voltage between the Earth and the heaven, like male or female, is like plus to minus. But the voltage difference between the galactic center and the galactic periphery is the opposite. So now, what? Just to finish the thought, what voltage literally means there is plus and minus charge is a name for flow lines that either do more converging or diverging, packing versus unpacking. So there's a time in history, which may well be now, when our magnetic, our memory, our genetic, our love, really needs to unfold, unpack, which is more feminine. Adam meant hard-making. Yeah. So, I mean, the suggestion here is the unfolding of consciousness, which I, in a sense, define or describe as self-reference and recursion, is made possible by these zodiac landscape structures.
Now, I understand what you're saying. And in your area of magnetism of plus and minus...
Coming and going, Jacob's ladder, all that.
But part of this, in your constructive model, there are two things that conduct electricity very well. One is water, and the other is granite.
Well, it's actually paramagnetic stone, limestone.
Well, granite, even better.
Yes, granite is also...
It's the optimum.
That's it.
All right? No stone will conduct electricity better than granite. And we were just discussing the possibility of them being able to pour granite also by the characteristics of what you saw in Mexico and the various regions around the world, and nobody wants to admit it. But what I want to kind of get back in this balance of power, flow, and things is that in your model, put the firmament back up. You know what the firmament is?
Yeah, re-inhabit the stars you came from.
But put the water back up and make the cloud bases like Venus and the gaseous planets that we see, because that also is one of the capacitors in the electricity balance of what we're talking about.
Spark that.
And gravity is the only thing that can separate salt water from fresh water, and in a sense it's done by the regulation of the temperature. And when we increase the temperature and the greenhouse effect, we eventually put all this water up, and then we lower the water levels, and maybe the pyramids in Japan will come back up, off Japan, and then the ones in Bemini Wall and all these megaliths that are, in a sense, secrets of the deep will come back up. So when we rebuild the world that was utilizing the things that you're talking about, the balance of the soul, the good side positive being the transmitter of Egypt as opposed to the Chinese pyramids being Draco, then, I mean, it becomes fascinating more and more because we're tying this picture closer together.
Well, we were asking Drunvalo earlier, actually, about his connection with Thoth, and Thoth's connection with, was it the Anunnaki or the Nephilim? Nephilim, because the story here is, if the geomancy of China at the Senshi Pyramid is really a fractal of Draco, and the dragon cult was the origin of the Chinese culture, then the myth about the Orion Queen Draco having, like the Borg Queen, lots of telepathy but not quite enough compassion, and so you have this kind of hive mind mentality, which does in a way characterize the Chinese to some extent. And that symbolizes then the sort of, in the high-end seraphim here, which I associate with the Nephilim, so, versus the other side of the sort of reptilian brain, which is the bird brain, which I associate with Aku, Akhenaten, and Ophiuchus. And so, again, you have this, can the serpent brain feed the bird brain, is really carried out in the land in terms of the culture is based on the primary fractality, embeddedness of its major geomantic structures. So it's like the culture of China is pointed to Draco, the culture of Egypt was pointed to Orion, the culture of the Templars was pointed to Virgo. You have these like pieces of the sunflower seed unfolding how we're going to point our genes into stars.
All right, now in this, you're the best one. I've seen one photograph of the pyramids in China. And earlier you were talking about that is a complex that will rival what we see in Giza. So what did you mean by all that?
Well, my sister has become very well known in China. She's been there many, many times now. And they have taken her to places in China. Now, she's been to Egypt 31 times, I believe it is. And,
How long have you been 19?
And she's been in just about every building there is there many times, and she knows what's there. But she's saying that what's in China, in places that they will not allow the rest of the world to go, that she's seen with her eyes, is far surpasses Egypt. So I think we don't really know. I think we only know a piece of it. And when you mention Japan also, those new pyramids that are being found underneath the water are only two of over 100 major pyramids, some of them bigger than the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
And they exist on the land in Japan. They're already there with huge blocks that are 100 tons, and just like in Egypt. And they're there now. They're not. Nobody knows they're there except the Japanese know they're there. They go to them, but that whole structure is there. And Childress, David Childress, is talking about what's going on in the South Pacific. There's whole structures in the South Pacific that again rival what's going on in Egypt. It's incredible what's on the Earth.
Exactly. Now, what mathematical model in your mind can tie all this together that gives a utilitarian purpose behind it? Because I don't see culture building, dropping, with all this similar technology of why the pyramid, why the place. I mean, you've gone why, but there's still something connectivity.
Well, from our point of view, which we've been studying this, and everybody's got different views, I realize, but we believe that almost 13,000 years ago, the poles shifted. We changed orbits. We were no longer, our consciousness fell down to a very low place where we are now from where we were. And that all of the structures that have been built all over the world were built by a single mind, a single thought. And the purpose was to geomance into the Earth to recreate what are called the grids around the Earth.
64-point tetrahedral geometry?
Well,
maybe.
And then you have 8 tetra fit in dodeca as 2 per cube. So, I mean, basically the hypercube is dodecaicasa.
It's dodecaicasa. It's that relationship.
Can you do that in layman's terms? You guys are good.
Actually, very simple. If you connect every other vertex of the cube, you have a tetra.
Right.
Or you just draw diagonal every face of the cube, you have a tetra.
Right.
So 2 tetra make a cube. Now, if you take that cube, sit it on the floor, very easy, tilt it up 32 degrees, look straight down, spin it slowly, and blink 5 times.
You'll see
a dodecahedron. You'll see a dodecahedron.
Every 72 degrees.
Right. Okay, so what that is, and the edge length.
All right.
The edge length is
good model.
The edge length of that pentodec is 0.618 to the edge of the cube, and that's a wave that can add and multiply with respect to itself, which permits self-embedding and starts implosion happening. And what that does is, that is the definition of self-reference, that you can go out in your own backyard, make a map of your backyard, where the magnetic spirals are, and learn to recognize the principle of embedding for yourself.
Okay, well, this grid that's around the world, which made of the dodecahedral grid, that I believe is the reason why all the pyramids were built, and that's what is happening now, is that we are now emerging into another level of consciousness that we could not have done if all those pyramids were not built all over the world. And the key lies in what you're finding, that curve and the 3 stars, the grid, and there's something there that is phenomenal for us. We'll see in the near future, I believe.
My personal research is that I'm dealing with light and light-controlled systems. That's what originally took me to Egypt. where I just wanted to study the Great Pyramid for the geometry that was necessary to control sunlight. But
DNA, or whether it's the architecture, or whether it's the magnetic lines through the land, or it's the magnetic lines through the stars. In each case, if the braid is what we call recursive or self-embedded or fractal, then that wave can re-enter itself non-destructively, and we call it self-aware.
at the location that by geogravitational phenomenon, it has to sit at the spot of cement.
Yeah, exactly. It's chemistry more than heat.
And what did Rome use to build the Colosseum?
Right. Well, see,
And the aqueducts and the all that was cement, wasn't it?
well, so the overall metaphor here is what we do with magnetism. I mean, in a sense, we're recognizing that if we can braid the magnetism, we can cut the rock. If we can braid the magnetism, we can create a waveform that's sustainable, whether it's...
And if you're real clever on it, you'll find that there's another line that runs through here that joins this stone, this one, and this one all together. These come from the Pyramid of Abu Dawash, or Rigel.
Well, you know, we have this technology of cement.
I don't know if you can see this or not.
It's incredible, isn't it?
A little tiny line.
And it's a glass material, and I'm not sure if it's adding material of this. I think you're going to find they're exactly the same. This material is without the coin in it.
That's right, this isn't a coin. This is,
But it's the same. But it's the same as this. All right. Now, look at this little glass bead that runs in between here.
Right.
That's what fuses the stones together. There is no space between them. Now, did they drag and cut and carve?
looks like a partial melt.
What's this stuff? Amber?
See, we have the technology cement, which is essentially liquid stone, but we haven't learned the actual sort of molecular symmetries in order to what we call melt that.
But we can do, well, I don't think melt, is mix it, because when we actually get back to a point that if we
might
look...
not involve heat as we know it.
Yeah, and what is